So when we're looking at mobile platforms, it's obviously getting more and more complex. It's dominated by the iPhone and the iPad, but you've got Android phones, you've got Android tablets, you've got Kindle with its Kindle Fire with its own flavor of Android. You've got now the Lumia 900. Maybe they'll start giving away for free. You could have a free Lumia. Kind of, never mind, joke went right over. But it's really getting harder, and it's really hard to keep up with all the changes from a technology standpoint. I want to talk about this idea of mobile first. It got a lot of airplay in the last year or two with, and I think a lot of people throw out the term and don't know what it means or don't really follow it. But I think when we're looking at mobile first, Luke Roboluski talked about embracing the constraints, right? When you look at mobile devices, right, they got a small screen, they're slow, and most of the time when the user's looking at it, they're not sort of sitting there and spending, let me dig into your content here. They're like, yeah, can I get the chicken tikka masala with, right, and they're kind of, they're flip through some things and they're doing something else. So you don't have all their attention span, right? So how do you do that? And the answer, one of the things is to really focus and simplify. I'll go through some examples of that in a second, but Marc had talked about this. Really, really focus your apps. If you go to most of any of our my pages, your pages, any content website, there is so much crap on the screen that is totally irrelevant, and it's there for a reason. Usually to benefit the publisher, not necessarily for the user. But you got to get rid of all that. Clear the fluff, get rid of things like Flash, really, really, really simplify on the screen here. And then there's the features, right? You've got GPS, you can tell kind of directionally, you got all these great things that are on the mobile app. Use them where they make sense, right? If I'm Starbucks and I'm putting out the Find a Starbucks store, yeah, I want to have the GPS thing in there. If I'm Bloomberg News and I want to have, show me the news on my ticker, you don't care where I am. Don't ask me. Don't try to say, wants to know your location. So use those features where they help. And then don't forget the obvious. So I started a new gig a couple of months ago, and I get these emails from one of the guys who works for me now. We get these marketing emails, and it's a formatted template, and it's 2 columns. And when I look at it on my iPhone, it's like, tiny. I can't read it at all. So don't only think about the big development issues, but think about what the user experience is all over. So I love this from Josh Clark, who wrote Tapworthy. What are the 3 core mobile behaviors? Microtasking. When is my flight home on Saturday? Ann just asked me that, right? Check something quickly, or check my email, or write a quick note. I'm local. Where's the nearest gas station? Where's the nearest place for sushi? Whatever it may be. Or I'm bored. I got 2 stops before my subway stop, and 3.5 minutes to kill. Okay, Temple Run. What do I do now? So that's what people are doing, and you have to think. And again, going back to that sort of half paying attention, you really you need to look at that. The best apps again are going to be focused on doing a single thing and doing that task really, really well. So let's look at a website we probably all know, right? Amazon. Greatest company in the world, retailer, does, blowing out their numbers. If you look at this site, I mean, it's horrendous, right? If you ever shop and try to, it's a miracle that they're doing this, because if you look at this, like up at the top, we've got, the search box. This is what you need. You've got a big thing for the Kindle Fire. They got to promote Kindle everywhere they go. Jeff Bezos has the tattoo on his head, like probably just Kindle. You've got, on the right, you've got a couple of, sponsored things, Call of Duty and Sonicare. And then you've got, they were talking about, Charlene mentioned their big fashion push for high-end fashion. So now you got this block party fashion thing where they're promoting other things. Below that, there's a couple, things that you've recently looked at. So I've got a bunch of amps and a Velvet Underground CD. All this stuff going on, right? And they get away with it because it's still a good place, good experience, and people will go in and they'll ignore that and punch in what they want in the search box. But on mobile, this just wouldn't fly. So when you look at mobile, here's 2 different Amazon apps on mobile. The one on the left is their price check. This is the one that really pissed off Best Buy and others, right? You're standing in a Best Buy. You're looking at this sort of, whatever it is for $249. You bring it up. You're standing on line at the register, and you pull it out, and you say, let me scan the price or take a picture of it or just type in the name. And you can see Amazon has it for $219, no sales tax, click, 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 and you can, just leave it and walk out the store because it's on its way being shipped to you. If you look at that app, it's very focused on what you did. It's just going to let you scan it or take a picture or say it or type it in, and then it's got, some other things you've recently checked, right? I actually checked those in a Best Buy. I was getting my daughter for her birthday. I got her a new sort of digital camcorder, and she wanted a decent tripod, whatever. So I was driving by a Best Buy. I said, I didn't get those. Let me see if they have them. And it was like ridiculously, 50% more expensive. So I ordered them from Amazon and left the store. So it works. The one on the right is the regular Amazon app, right? And this one, I'd argue, but look, they know what they're doing. It's working. But if you look, they got the search box there. They got their gold box for the hot deals. To the right of that, they're using about 15% of the screen for gift cards, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know if it's like, why it's a mobile thing, right? You're going to a party and you forgot to get your daughter's friend a birthday gift or something. You're like, oh God, here I got him a gift card. Email it. I don't know, but whatever it is, it worked. And they still insist on putting half the screen to the Kindle, which I don't get because when I'm on my mobile phone, I'm not thinking about I need to buy another device. I may want content or something, but I think it's just that's their mantra is we've got to push the Kindle everywhere. But these are things, if you go back and look at this thing, that experience versus these are nice and focused, really important. Okay. So now we'll go to my favorite topic. It's like the religious crusades, fervor, gay marriage, and apps versus mobile web, right? And this is in deference to my daughter. I had to put the Hunger Games enemies there. Katniss is on the left. I have no idea the guy on the right, but he's the bad guy. we know that. The whole thing, I want to throw a couple of thoughts on a topic, and then we'll dig into some examples of the apps and such, right? Here's where you guys can fight me on this debate, whatever, because we really got to get it, But the app experience today is significantly better than the mobile web experience, in my opinion. And it's the tightness and snappiness of the apps, the performance, all the things. It's just a better experience, right? And it means that, that for the customer, they're getting a better experience out of your apps today, but it doesn't make it easier for the developers, for the publishers, right? So, who in the room here, we do the polling the old way, right? Who delivered content on diskettes and CD-ROMs at some point in their career, right? Okay. Really sucked. I mean, you're like, you do these things. I can remember we bought a CD-ROM burner duplicator, cha-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Every 30 seconds it would flip out another one. You send them out to like 500 users, and then you realize you had a bug, and you redo them all and send them out again. And it was a terrible experience, but it was very much like today's mobile environment. Desktop computers were really powerful. The networks were kind of crappy. So if you could deliver someone a piece of content on a little platter, they put it in, and they could run and have a really good, powerful experience on their desktop, even though it was not a good experience for publishers. As the web came into being and started to move toward having that that ubiquitous bandwidth that we're still dreaming about, but it made it where inside the enterprise people had the bandwidth, and you could deliver content through the web, and it was almost as good as the desktop. It's still only just catching up. I mean, how many people here work for companies who've dropped Microsoft Office and switched only to Google Office? I knew Larry's hand would go up. Robin, okay. Yeah. So for the rest of you, it's sort of, today you can make that switch, and it really actually works. Or other than redlining and a couple other things where it's sort of still helpful, it's good enough. But it's really just getting there now, where the apps on the web are as good as the desktop in terms of performance. So the mobile web definitely has some catch-up time. But let's not listen to me. We'll listen to some smart people. We could start with Marc Andreessen, right? Certainly a guy who likes the web and browsers. So, and he's talking about the mobile apps as he sees it, and I believe this completely. They're a temporary step along the way toward the mobile web. And again, the whole pitch here is that every time that they come and they use your app on the web, it's going to let them get the best experience because it's the newest software, the newest data. But it depends on the ubiquity. We're not there yet. And again, Jacob Nielsen, and he's talking about how the apps, what you can do with apps, native apps, is you can target the weaknesses. Remember? Small screen, crappy bandwidth, all these kind of limitations of these devices. And you can really, target it with an app and take advantage and optimize for those. Whereas if you're doing just kind of a mobile web app, you just cannot do it. Get there, And again, he points out the same issues with it's hard to develop and maintain these apps. The world will shift. I don't know if it's 3 years, 5 years, or whatever, but it will shift toward the mobile web. But right now, I think there's still a big advantage to native apps, right? So if we're going to accept their expertise on this, the question is sort of what does that mean for us in terms of the whole developing native apps, and how do you plan and put this together? Starting point, obviously, is looking at platforms, right? You've got to figure out, iOS and Android are the only platforms that really matter today, and depending on your audience, it may just be iOS that matters. If you have a really big presence, you may want to start doing Android. iOS development's a lot easier than Android, because with iOS, you really have two devices to worry about. You've got the iPhone platform, which is really the 4 and 4S, and then you've got the iPad platform, the iPad, new iPad, iPad 2, and iPad, and the original iPad. And Apple's been very good about being backwards compatible, and if you're optimizing for iPad 2 and iPad 3, for iPhone, you're clean and good. Android, it's every single device is a different manufacturer's implementation of the operating system. I said that with meaning, right? Even within one product line, you take the Samsung Galaxy Tab tablet, right? Android tablet, and Samsung is probably right now doing more interesting things than anybody with Android. But there's a 10.1 inch, 8.5 inch, and a 7-point-something inch version of the Galaxy Tab, and those are three different devices. They're not the same. The shade density of your graphics is different on those different devices. So if you optimize for the Galaxy Tab 10.1, it's different than the 8.5 or whatever that it is. So it's really complex. And iOS, Apple gives you, I think, 57 colors in their 57 fonts to choose from in their development. Android gives you 3 fonts. So you can't even take your Rocket iPad app and say, this is great, I'm going to kind of move it over. It's a lot of work developing for these. So that's the key, is kind of figuring out what your audience is using, what they're using it for, and do you need to support that? Is if 75% of your mobile audience is going to come from iPads, then you can focus on that and use mobile web for anything else that comes along, for example. Then you start looking at the specific things like, do you need offline access, right? So every morning I like to read the New York Times on the subway on my iPad. So what I need to do is, when I go to walk the dog in the morning, I hit the button for New York Times and it goes out and gets the latest version. So by the time I come back, a minute later, it's loaded. I'm on the subway, I can read the entire New York Times offline. Clearly you need to have a native app. You can't do that through mobile web. So you have to start thinking about, do I need an offline experience? And what is that offline experience? The things, companies like The Daily from News Corp has, which I'll show later, some things, they download all media but not video. So if you go and you load the latest edition, you get text, stories, images, crosswords, Sudoku, sports scores. But for video, you have to be connected to the web, because you don't want to do an extra, 60 or 80 meg download there for assets. You want to think about that. Notifications are another case where, if you want to use the notification system, is a great way to make sure that people aren't forgetting about your app. Hey, remember me? Look what happened here. This is interesting news. So Dow Jones, for example, an app you've got news content flowing. LexisNexis, in their app, you can sign up for certain keywords, and then it'll pop open and say, hey, you got new stories. You have to be an app for that. You can't do that through the mobile web to access the APNS system on Apple. Other phone features. So Tekka is a company that was startup that was incubated by Best Buy. and they're kind of, they hired a bunch of bloggers, and they're trying to be a really cool gadget blog site, mobile first web, but they put in a barcode scanner. So you can, if you're in a store, whether you're in Best Buy and you just want to see the reviews on this item, or you're in any store, you can go in and scan something. You can't access the camera on a phone through the mobile web, through an Apple iPhone. You can only do that through a native app. So there's a lot of things that you need to do, that you need to understand when you're looking at it and say, which of these features are really important to me, and those will drive what parts of your solution has to be done through native app, and where you might be able to use the mobile web. And we'll talk in a minute about some blended sort of versions of those. Other things to look at, and maybe this should have been the prior slide if we were listening to Marc. Obviously, you got to have a business model, right? Hopefully you thought that through before you got to the point of doing this here. But other things you got to look at, do you need a presence in the App Store? And I have this discussion, we were talking about it during one of the coffee breaks, but I had this discussion with a lot of people who say, oh, well, we don't need, I don't need to be in the App Store because, unless my app is named like Angry Birds / Bloomberg News, it's not going to make the top list, right? So, you're not going to browse to it. Nobody's ever going to browse to, like, I want to go to, financial information, da-da-da-da-da. And that's true, but if you look at the way users find apps or users access them, there's a difference between discovery and accessing and loading. I know for me, I may be reading something in an article that says, oh, here's this really cool app, da-da-da. The first thing I'm going to do is I go over to my App Store thing and I punch in search and I try to find it. And if it's not there, it doesn't exist. So that's really important. If you're going to, even if you don't think anyone's going to discover you through the App Store, you still want to have a presence there. How are you going to get paid? Again, going in, I don't need to repeat all of Marc's stuff, but we've got, the whole business model question there is, where are you generating revenue? Is this really just an extension, a product line extension of a desktop app where, it's a nice feature to have. People might want to just do quick lookups and maybe the bookmark stuff that they'll read in depth later? Or is this, designed to be a sponsored app to run, generate advertising, to do sponsorships? Is it free? Is this going to be a paid app? So, depending on your business model is really going to also determine kind of what you want to do around the native app versus a mobile web. And then the home screen is the other thing people don't think about with the mobile web. It is possible to go to any website through your browser on your iPad and save that to your home screen, right? How many people know how to do that? So this is a sophisticated audience, and about a third of the people know. When you go out into the sort of unwashed masses, nobody's going to know how to do that. So if you expect them to go to remember that, oh, what should I do today? Oh, I should go and look up that site again and go back to it and type in a URL or go find it in a browser. They're just not going to do that. So you want to have that presence on the home screen, so at least it's a reminder. If you take that and APNS notifications, there's this sort of reminder. Hey, remember me? Because I must have, I don't know. My daughter was saying the other day, like, how many screens of apps do you have on this damn thing? I don't think she said damn. But I probably have 150 apps or something on my iPad. They get lost in there, but at least if they're on the home screen, you got a chance. If it's not on my home screen, nothing's going to drive me back to that. Right? Other things you need to think about, again, on sort of the whole app side of it is really what are the technology resources you have? What are your development skills in-house? I look at it and a couple of assumptions I make. The team that built your website is probably not at all equipped to build your mobile app, right? If your lead developer's over the age of 25, they are probably not equipped to lead the development of your mobile app. They don't get it. They're gonna. It's just not going to succeed. And then, as a publisher, you're really not. The challenge is you're not well equipped to be able to attract, hire and retain the top-notch talent that are building mobile apps today. That's a challenge that we're all facing, is that if I were 22 years old and, just got my degree and I got a year experience, and what's really cool is if I just got my degree, I've been working in Amazon's cloud and I've probably been messing around building mobile apps. I've been doing things in college that your core team doesn't do. But if I come out and I'm like, all right, let's see, who are these hot new companies that I want to go work for? And, do I want to do a startup? Do I want to go to some cool brand? Because maybe they're, Charlene was showing a lot of brands who are becoming publishers. So, do I want to go work for a cool brand that's doing something? Or do I want to go work for a B2B information service? And, a lot depends on sort of your environment, right? Because if I'm a developer, I probably don't want to work those hours that you guys usually work, like getting to work at 8:30 in the morning. And when you say go to work, you mean showing up and sitting at a desk at your place and Dell? You want me to work on a Dell? Isn't that the thing that exploded and went on fire? I want to work at night if I want to work at night, or I want to do my stuff whenever I want to do it. I'm going to work on a Mac, and I'm probably going to work from my house, and I'm going to get my work done, and I'll crank out great stuff, but it may not be in the schedules that you want. So it really raises a lot of issue, and you get in the whole question. Then do you need to outsource? Do you need to bring in? How can you build this? If you do outsource it, how do you maintain that? Because it's really good. You get that burst, right? Marc had the client that, hey, we got $1 million in the budget. Let's go build an iPad app. We'll go hire some agency. They never really built anything at work, but they did a cool prototype. We get it. We finally get it launched. They go away, and now I got to enhance it and maintain it. So there's no easy answers, but these are things you got to really be thinking about. Going through. Now, going back to the development, I sort of talked about the Katniss and what's his face there. It really isn't as big a battle as everybody seems to make it out to be, this whole kind of native apps, because there's a whole bunch of this sort of a continuum of approaches, and it's not an all or nothing thing. So when you look at native apps, and then there are these hybrid apps. So I mentioned Tekka before. Tekka is this Best Buy incubated startup, and they've got really cool apps for iPhone, iPad, Android phone, Android tablets. They do native apps. But it's a native app wrapper with some native functionality. So I mentioned that, the barcode scanner. They had to build some things native, but all their content is served up in HTML5. HTML5 is great for that. It's great for serving really compelling content. You can do a lot of interaction, a lot of engagement. But they needed some pieces to make the navigation flow work, and for some of its functionality, they needed the native apps. So it's, the other day everybody used the LinkedIn, download the new LinkedIn app for your iPad. Really good app. Just came out about a week ago, the new version. I was shocked to read it's 95% HTML5. But the navigation features and such are all native. So it doesn't have to be, it's not this like, which way you go and the other. There are some other things I'll talk about. There's replica apps, right? This was a big thing. Newspapers and magazines have been really big on these replica apps. A replica app basically replicates the experience you have with the print product on digital, right? So Apple hired all these engineers, and they spent, 2 years and tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars building this kick-ass, amazing product, right? And then you use it to develop a content product that has all of the functionality of a piece of paper. Like, these things are horrible. It was a good debate I had yesterday online with the editor of MIT's Technology Review, because he wrote this blog post at the end of the app economy. Anyone read it? Okay, great article. He said, you know what we did? We went out, we spent $124,000. Okay, that's not it's a good amount of money, but it's not like they invested $10 million. We outsourced development of a replica app that had no links, no live links in it. We put our content, and it was a walled garden, no links. It was like a PDF, except a PDF would have links at least. This had no links. And we only sold 353 paid subscriptions to it. And therefore, my deduction is that, my outcome is that the app economy makes no sense. Like, no, and I posted my thing. Crappy replica apps are not going to save publishers. Like, if you build a shitty app, I don't care whether you built it on whatever platform it was, you're not going to engage the audience. So there's this whole replica app, and I'll show a couple. It's just crazy to me that you're going to, you start with the idea of, oh, we've got a, I'm a publisher, therefore I create stories. And so that's my first container, is I'm going to have an article. And then I'm going to assemble a couple of articles into an issue, because that's how I've always done it for 100 years. And now I'm going to deliver that on this new device. So we really have to be creative and think about what does my user want? What's the thing? What's the problem we're solving for it? What does this device allow me to do to solve that problem? And then how do we, what kind of stream of content does that? It's not necessarily let's create that same issue. I talked a little bit about the mobile web, and then a mixed model of let's build the native app for iPad and do everybody else through mobile web and so forth. So there's different development approaches there. And I'm going to show some examples in just a minute of each of those, but I did want to just take a minute to talk about this sort of concept of responsive design, which is an interesting area. I think a lot of people have probably heard about it. This came out of an architecture, area of architecture, building architecture, not IT architecture, around responsive. And the idea there was that rooms should respond to people when they come in. So it could be simple things. You got 50 people show up in a room, maybe the air conditioning gets cranked up, the lights go a little brighter or deeper, and then they take it into all kinds of funky, kind of cool prototype things. But the idea with doing responsive design on your development is that you should be able to develop your application in a way that it understands what device is being used to read it. So even if it's a mobile web, it knows what the device is, and it can adapt to that. So it says, okay, I'm on a iPad in landscape format. I'm going to throw this article up and do 3-column and do a big, bold headline, and I'm going to put a big image here and whatever. Now someone else fires up the same website, and I'm on an iPhone. It says, okay, go single stack, small image, quick load, no flash, whatever. So it's this whole idea that, the picture that it says here is, on the right is obviously your typical resolution of a desktop screen, 1024 by 768, and on the left is your iPhone. So, when everybody's thinking, they can go to our website and look at it on the iPhone, that doesn't translate well. Okay. Jump into some examples here, but any questions first? I told you guys I'd just start. Okay.
One of the questions I have about this is that I think that a real challenge that you have when you develop a native app is that you go back to siloed content. And it's fine if you have a one-task set of content that people just want to do the one thing. They want to scan that thing and find out what the price is or find the reviews. But if you want content to flow in with other things that they might be using as part of their workday, we're actually then going backwards like 10 years in terms of having, on the desktop, we've finally started to overcome some of those challenges with siloed content. And I know a lot of people in the business world just don't want to go back there. I mean, how do you address some of that?
So I think it's a good point, Robin. And there's also, you don't have to completely be siloed because you're in an app, right? You can still, Twitter is an app, or on the iPhone, but when I click on a link in Twitter, it's going to open up a browser page, and it's going to bring me there, and I can navigate and I can work with it. So I'm not locked in. I don't have to have this like crappy PDF with no links in it just because that's what I built. So I don't think you have to be. It doesn't have to be the walled garden. It does. You do want to look at though how users.
Your slides are advancing on their own.
My slides are. Oh, there we go. Wow. Okay, that's cool. See, it doesn't happen on mobile. No. All right. So stay. So I think it doesn't have to, but I think it also, again, you go back to the use cases and what are you trying to do with that? And in some of the mobile experiences, I don't want to go and navigate and explore and kind of do all these things and open up 100 paths. I want to complete a task. Company I work for, Reis, does commercial real estate information. I'm going to be using it not because it's like, hey, what's going on in the world of commercial real estate today? It's going to be, I need to do an appraisal for an office building. I need to understand what the income potential is this office building. As I'm walking through it, I may want to take a few pictures, and then I want to punch in some numbers and assumptions, and then get a report out of that. And it may not, may not need to be fully integrated. But I think, look, that'll evolve, and I think 5 years from now, we're going to, with the mobile web, will be powerful enough, hopefully, and the access will be ubiquitous enough that you can kind of get there. But I think we definitely have to make some decisions. And I think when I talked about early on this sort of, you get rid of everything and you try to find what is the one or two things that people really want to do on your site. If you apply that to your website as well, not just your mobile, but your desktop, if it works that well on this crappy little device, it's going to rock on your website. So I think we've had this, canvas that we can paint with all kinds of junk and crap and put these in, start with the blogs. Hey, 160 widgets, and look, it takes 7 minutes for my blog to load, but, I can do all kinds of cool things. Your users don't want that. So I think it's going back to understanding the users and figuring out what's a right experience in mobile. Any other questions? I think we're going to flip over to the other device here. So let's see if we get there. Oh, wait, sorry, my Ramones cats. Sorry about that. So I want to show a couple of apps right now, and I'm going to show a mix of things that are our native apps, that are mobile web, and some replicas and some good and bad experiences. Start with Flipboard. Does everybody in here have an iPad? Show of hands, right? Does everybody? That's great. Does everybody here use their iPad on a daily basis for like an hour or a half hour for part of that? Because I think that's the other thing you got to get in the habit of doing is not just use it to check email, but force yourself to kind of use different things. This is Flipboard. If anyone doesn't use it yet, it's like my favorite. This is one of the best tools I have for productivity. I use it to, we used to all read RSS feeds, and we had RSS readers, and we do this. I use Flipboard as my kind of morning reading. So I ended up, I've got different Twitter lists and such that I'll go here, and all the content, all the links come in there. So I get all these great things. So if I go into, Flipboard, I'll go into content marketing. I'm going to see here's a bunch of stories. I go into a story. Very nice navigation. It kind of only hiccups when I get to the point of if I want to go into the native, go out to the web to kind of read the original article. Sometimes it's a little slow and clunky. But this is a really nice kind of smooth, you're in a native app. It's just sort of, it's tight. Everything's kind of cruising. Works really well. I can go in. If I favorite something in Twitter, I can then read it later. So there's all my, hopefully nothing embarrassing. Can't remember what I favorited. Okay, we'll move along there now. But you can see with Flipboard, just really, great user experience. LinkedIn I mentioned before. So again, this is the navigation to get here was all native, but once I go in and I start reading stuff, this is all HTML5 pages here. So important things like Lady Gaga's trailer for her Simpsons appearance. And then you get the sort of profile stuff and pages. Again, all, HTML5 at this point. It's all in here. Kind of nice, clean interface. So I think they've done a great job. Now I want to show a couple of, I want to show, I'm sorry, one of the guys I mentioned earlier is the Daily, News Corp's tablet app. I guess it just updated, so we have Obama's announcement and the 800-pound bride. See, the thing with the Daily took a lot of, there's a lot written about it, and all talks about how, they spent $30 million building this, and they didn't spend $30 million building an app, right? They spent $30 million building a new business, launching a new brand into a very competitive space that happened to be delivered through a web. So I don't think the numbers are probably that out of line with what other product launches and company launches are. But take that aside, what they've really done is I think they've done about as good a job as anyone at really saying, how do we optimize for the tablet environment, right? You know, if I look at the top here, if I want to kind of spin through the pages, right, I can navigate different, you know, much nicer navigation than, let's see, wait, where was the, I got orangutan there, okay. You know, they've got, if you go and look at, they've got 360-degree photos that are in here. And the other thing that's kind of cool about them, let me find some of the photo pages. Let's see if I find, let me go find a good example. Is that a lot of their pages, when I turn it into, go from landscape, this one's sort of the same, but you'll get different functionality, different capabilities if you're in landscape mode or if you're in portrait mode. Let's see this one. Here's an ad that I think is going to behave differently. You know, nice interactive ad. Okay. Everybody get a free breakfast at our hotel? No, I guess me either. So wipe the steam to continue. Let's see what happens here. So, you know, here I'm wiping the screen. So they're really going and taking advantage of what an iPad can do, right? I'm not going to go through the whole, whoops, got to the wrong, sorry. But that's the daily. Now I want to show you what replica apps look like, right? So Zinio is sort of a bookshelf for replica apps. You can kind of feed them your content, and they will package it into this, and people can subscribe to it. And if I go and look at, you know, Zinio, and I pick up one of their sections, I get articles in art, and I'll just choose to read this one, right? So I get some nice, you know, it's some nice pictures, right? But this, it's really, I'm reading, you know, it's a paper product that's showing on my computer, you know, on my device here. I don't get any, you know, there's no taking advantage of things. There's no functionality. It's just a bunch of pages that I can kind of spin through back and forward, right? And that one was, so if I go back to, let's go back to there. If I choose a different topic, it'll probably, you know, we'll see some with more news content, you know. Again, here's a better example of something, right, where, you know, it's exactly how some people imagine taking a print product and bringing it to the device here. You know, I can go in here and I can make the text bigger. But other than that, you know, there's not much interaction. This is, you know, when you look at why MIT, their app failed, that's kind of what it is, right? Seattle Times. Beautiful replica, right? Because this is what I want. But, you know, thankfully, right, I can go and I can do this, and I can even, like, double-click into a story and get a story. And then I can go back and be back on here. You know, God, who could ask for more? You know, so. Now, I did want to go back and show a couple of things I think are really good on pure HTML5. One of the best ones I've seen is electionism. This is from the team at The Economist. And they created this site for the elections, U.S. elections. And this is all HTML5. There's no native here. And you could see when I just did that swipe, it kind of, you know, it didn't go smoothly. It's not as tight, but it's pretty good. You know, if we go in here and I go into a section, you know, I'll get it. It's a little clunky, but this is pretty close. So this is, I would say, you know, what they've done, what the FT has done are, you know, pretty much state-of-the-art for HTML5, and it'll get better, right? So, you know, I still think a couple of years down the road, we're going to be looking at these. I don't know why my home isn't going home, but, you know, that is sort of a viable thing. The other thing is this company called OnSwipe. OnSwipe takes your blog and kind of turns it into a swipeable tablet experience. So if you have a WordPress blog, you plug in one line of code, and you suddenly have, you know, a swipeable kind of environment. Much cooler than looking at a regular WordPress blog. If I click into one, not the Ronald McDonald one. I skipped that. You know, I can go through here and kind of get a nice navigation. But nobody's going to say this is the equivalent of a native app. So those were some quick demos. Any questions on that? No? Other favorite apps? Things people hate. Anyone think I'm totally off base? Start a fight? No? Come on. Keep it interesting. Let's slip back to the slides for a minute. I got a couple of slides I just want to talk through, and then I'm going to turn that over. So I just want to talk for a minute, and tomorrow we're going to do a deeper look in the world of analytics. Larry Schwartz is going to take us through that, but I did want to just touch briefly about the differences between the analytics in the web and analytics in the mobile space, right? Analytics on the web are great. They've gotten better and better. If you use things like Chartbeat, you can see in real time who's reading what story. Do they respond? This HuffPost does things like, are they responding to this headline or that? A/B testing of headline or content in real time. Kind of really great stuff. Which of my writers are getting the most page views, and why do I still employ the other ones, and all this kind of stuff that publishers are looking at. In the mobile web, all that's really different. You're looking at engagement. You're looking at sessions. You're not looking really at page views, right? The tracking is challenging and complex, right? Because you can't just cookie people and sort of it's a device ID, and then Apple doesn't let you use the UDID, their device ID anymore for tracking. So there's complexities of how do you track someone, and if they're using multiple devices, how do you know that? That offline usage, my wife's iPad is Wi-Fi only. It's not the 3G. Sometimes she's not connected, so she may look at something, and then it may be 3 days if hers doesn't connect again to the web. It might be 3 days before that gets uploaded into your system. So you have to go and kind of look in the back, to see what was going on, and your analytics really can't be an afterthought, because you're going to be, again, once the app is loaded, you can't say, oh, I forgot to put Google Analytics on that page. I would do it on the web, and I'd be like, oh, go in 3 minutes later, we've loaded the page again, and it's good, we're tracking. Well, here you had all those downloads, and now you can't, some of those people may download your new version, but they don't. So you got to really, kind of think that through ahead of time. But, you'll see that you're tracking sessions and you're tracking activity and who comes back after the first visit. Just a different set of rules here. So back to Marc's points as I wrap up here, it's all about figuring out what you're trying to accomplish with these apps. Set the goals, match those to your business model, test, measure, test again. It's a new world. There's a lot of changes. It's not, nobody has figured it all out. There's very few companies that have said, here's like my numbers were off the charts in terms of our, other than like Rovio and the game guys. But in the content world, like nobody's really figured it all out yet. So go test some stuff, come up with reasonable expectations and measure to them. And then keep iterating and iterating. If you can move to an agile approach, my company is still very much a, they would think of themselves as sort of a quasi waterfall, waterfall 2.0 thing there. So, when I joined, I sat down with our head of the developer department, and I said, okay, so we're going to give me we need to hire dedicated developers for my team, and we're going to run with, I want to do kind of 3-week sprints and do it in Agile. And he was cool. He was like, yeah, I've read about that. I've never done it, but if you want to go for it, do it. So, you want to come up with a structure that allows you to experiment and test, because that's what this world needs. So. So anyway, I've got some things. If you don't have a bunch of these apps we've looked at today and others, you should play with them, download them. MapQuest is another really cool HTML5 app. So play with it, engage, use your iPad every single day, not just kind of for the guys who were playing Angry Birds while I was talking, not that, but like the other stuff. Really use it. Try to see if you can replace your desktop or laptop with it for a couple of days at a time, and sort of understand the constraints that it gives you and the freedoms it gives you. So